That Davis Show. We're lucky enough to be joined by John McClain. You can always hear him on Sports Radio 610 down in Houston, and also he's getting extra bags at 104.5 in Nashville. Follow him at McClain_on_the NFL. How are you doing this evening, John?
I'm doing great, Ken, and my real job, which is working for the Houston Chronicle and covering the NFL for 45 years.
I apologize. I was going to ask you that because I was looking at an article today, and when I was looking at your bio, I was like, I should say that, and I meant to ask you before the interview, so that's on me. I apologize.
That's no problem at all.
I wanted to bring you on because I asked my executive producer Ryan, I want someone from Houston to really break down the Deshaun Watson situation, because I don't feel like nowadays we get regional people coming on sports shows, especially national. You know, like I feel like a decade ago, the nationally they have someone from Houston come on, let's just say ESPN, and kind of break down perhaps what's going down there. Perhaps there has been, but I don't feel like I've heard it enough. So I wanted to start with this, John. One thing, a name that you've been hearing pop up a lot is the Texans executive vice president Jack Easterby. And so who exactly, for anybody that doesn't know Jack Easterby, how long has he been with the team, and how much of the misfortune would you say that has taken place can be laid at his feet?
First of all, Easterby was with the Chiefs, and he went to the Patriots, and he worked with the Patriots for 6 years as a character coach. And what that meant was he was an advisor for players. If players had a problem, they could talk to him about it. Bill Belichick trusted him enough. He wanted to know his opinion about players, not as a personnel expert, but as a people expert. And he was there for 6 years, and I think he got 2 Super Bowl rings, and everything worked out well. And then his contract was up, and reportedly several teams were interested. The Texans had Bill O'Brien as the head coach, who had come from the Patriots, working with Bill Belichick, not Jack Easterby. But Belichick recommended him to O'Brien. O'Brien got him hired as a senior vice president of team development. And that season of 2019, the Texans went 10-6, won the division for the 4th time in 5 years. And we didn't hear much about Easterby, even though O'Brien praised him a lot and how much he appreciated his input and his counsel. And then the next offseason, after the 2019 season, when they beat Buffalo in the playoffs and then blew that 24-year-old lead to Kansas City in divisional round, O'Brien got the official GM title, even though he'd been performing the duties for a year. And then Easterby got a promotion to senior executive vice president of football operations. And last season, in that season, O'Brien talked to us a lot about how closely he and Easterby worked, that they made joint decisions. Well, that wasn't true, because nobody told Bill O'Brien what to do, because he had control of all personnel and coaching decisions. But still, he told everybody what a great job Easterby did and how they worked closely together, and people didn't think much about it. And then when they started so badly, and then when he got fired at 0-4, they made Easterby the interim GM, and then Romeo Crennel the interim head coach. And so people started to blast the Texans owner, Cal McNair, because he didn't fire Easterby along with O'Brien. Everybody wanted both of them gone at the same time. Well, Easterby was the right guy to be the interim GM. There was no complaint about him then. But they were terrible, and people don't like anything associated with New England because they think of Bill O'Brien. They wanted Bill gone. He was a subject of so much criticism. And now they've got Easterby back. And not only has Easterby got in really tightly with the owner, Cal McNair, the GM, Nick Caserio, who came from the Patriots, and they're good friends. They worked together for 6 years. They became friends. Now they're working closely together. Caserio has in his contract, like O'Brien, he has final say on everything. But Easterby's right there on anything involving football operations, including personnel, even though he's not a personnel expert. And so people don't like him. They want him fired. Some of the players don't like that he's involved in personnel. That really he's involved. He's got his fingerprints in every part of the organization. But When you got the owner on your side, that's the only one you need. Now he's got the GM on his side as well. And a lot of people think if they fired him, that Watson would play. I don't know if it's true. We have not heard from Watson. We've only heard from sources close to Watson leaking information in national media like at ESPN and NFL Network. And until we actually hear from Deshaun Watson about we know what he wants, but why he wants it, and if there's a chance it could be worked out. And the thing is, the new coach, David Culley, I feel terrible for him. New defensive coordinator, Lovie Smith, all their coaches, they came here hoping that Watson will change his mind. At some point, Culley, offensive coordinator Tim Kelly, who Watson loves and wanted back, quarterback coach Pep Hamilton, one of the best in the league, coming off a tremendous job with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. And then Josh McCown, their third quarterback, we think he'll be the assistant quarterback's coach, and Watson loves him too. So everything is set up to try to make Watson happy, but at some point you need to meet with him, and so far they haven't been able to communicate with him.
That David Show right now, I have on John McClain with me. You can always check him out with his writings in the Houston Chronicle. Follow him at McClain_on_the NFL. So real quick before I shift to Deshaun, as far as Easterly, would you say that he's being scapegoated then? Because if you just pointed out they had success in – listen, I'm in Chicago, so I don't have – as far as with the Bears, there's no consistency when it comes to winning. And we kind of have someone, even I would say, can kind of compare to how you said with Easterly, we have Ted Phillips, who is actually the president, even though he's not supposed to have anything to do with the football operations side. But he's someone that people have been called on, have called for him to be fired, but he's been part of the organization since the 80s. But as far as Easterby, are you kind of saying that it's more of the situation that this year went south and people are blaming him, but overall, perhaps he doesn't deserve some of the ire that he's getting from the fan base?
Well, he hasn't been scapegoated, and he had nothing to do with what happened on the field. They had Watson played great. They had no running game, 31st in rushing, 32nd against the run, second worst running team in team history, worst in team history stuff in the run. No offensive lineman played as well as he played in 2019. Easterby didn't have anything to do with that, but there's some people who have been fired. There's some people that he's telling what to do behind the scenes that don't think he should be. So that's why people are so unhappy and want him fired, but he's not going anywhere. I don't think he's had any kind of impact on what happens on the field, but he's having an impact on what's happening off the field. But, people are hoping that Caserio, with 6 Super Bowl rings and being with the Patriots for 20 years and being long overdue to be a GM, that he has that control for the first time in his career. They're hoping he knows what he's doing.
Now, where did, and again, you pointed out, so I'm asking for your opinion, but where did the relationship perhaps between Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, if it did, start to dissolve? And is that really, would you place a lot of what's going on with Deshaun beginning with Bill O'Brien and then to Cal McNair, or is it solely, do you find it to Cal McNair?
Yeah, there's nothing to do with O'Brien. Watson praised O'Brien all the time. Every time there'd be talk about O'Brien being fired, he would come to his defense. Deshaun Watson's a great guy. Yeah, we asked him about Eric Bieniemy near the end of the year. He praised the heck out of him, even though he admitted he never met him, only to shake hands after a game. I asked him about Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, who he talked to after the second time they played. He praised him. Even when we were doing a story on Jack Easterby, he praised him. So it's not in Watson's nature to be negative. That's one reason people are so shocked here, because it's just so un-Deshaun Watson-like. We could understand James Harden scorching the earth on his exit, because that's James. James came in late, out of shape, didn't play well, didn't play hard, and then ripped the team, and he got what he wanted going to Brooklyn. I don't see Watson doing that. That's just not his personality. He's such a good guy, and he's respected by everybody. Everybody in the organization loves him. People cover him, love him. Fans love him. His teammates do, and that's why they're adamant that they're not going to trade him, because they're holding all the cards, considering he's under a $156 million contract through 2025.
That David Show here with John McClain. Follow him at McClain_on_the NFL. Listen, you brought up Deshaun's character, and that's somewhat not as much as usually, and being a brother, not as usually how brothers get hit. But you have, for instance, Dick Vermeil and Brett Favre. Dick Vermeil came out and questioned his character. and Brett Favre basically told him to shut up and play. Is that starting to be the consensus with the fan base, or has what Deshaun Watson has done up to this point been too much for this incident to totally harm what people view as him being a good person in general?
I run every Friday a mailbag, and I run 200 inches of fans. And 90% of them are blasting Cal McNair and Jack Easterby. And there's about 10% that are ripping Watson. And I think those are probably people, based on what they say, who own businesses or who are general managers that say you are paid to play, not to make decisions. And I tell people, I get that on my talk shows. I said, times have changed. What the NFL does not want to be like the NBA, where a couple of agents and a couple of players control so much. The NFL is run by the owners, baseball is run by the union, and the NBA is run by the players. And agents. And so the NFL doesn't want that. And there's nobody can question Watson's integrity. For whatever reason, he wants to be traded. But until he says so, I know it's true, but until he says what the reasons are, I'm going to be baffled. I want to hear it from him. I don't want to hear it leaked from anonymous sources close to him.
So look, speaking of anonymous sources, and I'm sure with your connection to the Chronicle and radio, I mean, again, I'm not asking you to tell, I don't want you to say something that's false or hasn't been corroborated, but still just your feeling. Because when you start to hear that the fracture between Cal McNair and Deshaun Watson, you ask yourself, what could it be from a player to just sign his contract, even though, to be honest with you, in the NFL, you have to get the guarantee money when the guarantee money is offered regardless. Like you have to. But is this from a broken promise of a player wanting to have more input? Or is this because the franchise is dysfunctional? Or has there been something disrespectful, and me being black on a racial side, has that been inferred when it comes to Watson and Cal McNair at all?
I haven't heard anybody say anything racial. I mean, the Texans, well, I'm not even gonna go there, because it's anybody knows anything about the Texans and who they've employed through the years, including Watson as the quarterback, $156 million. No, Watson's never said anything about that. We run pictures in the Chronicle of them hugging, shaking hands after games. Watson cried when he got his contract, and everybody was so happy for him. Here's all I think I know. Watson told us with about 3 weeks left in the season that he had talked to Cal McNair about what kind of head coach they were going to hire. Were they looking offense, defense? He said, we're looking for the best one. We got to get a general manager. The general manager is going to oversee that search, and he'll make the decision, and then Cal McNair will sign off on it. And then Watson told us a couple of times he had been in contact with McNair about some couple of coaches he'd like to see interviewed. And when we interviewed him on our last Zoom, I asked him a couple of questions about the GM, and he never said anything about the GM. It was all about the coach. And we ran names by him, like Eric Bieniemy, Matt Eberflus, Arthur Smith, some others. And he doesn't know those guys personally. He had Robert Saleh on his list, even though he doesn't know Robert Saleh, because he's heard good things about him. And so the first negative thing we heard was when Nick Caserio was named GM. Watson put out a tweet that he deleted. It said, some things never change. And we thought that meant going back to the New England well, so to speak. But we don't know. And then shortly after that, a source close to Watson told ESPN that he was upset he had to learn about the GM on social media. So the GM thought that it was all about the coach, like we all did, and he sent an apology for the miscommunication. Usually somebody apologizes, that's good. Usually you talk about it. But so I can't imagine Deshaun Watson would put himself in a position to be forced to retire, which he's not going to do, or lose millions and millions of dollars because he found out about Nick Caserio on social media, which a GM hire you'd think he'd be fired up about, and he might be. And I think if he met David Culley, he'd be fired up about Culley. Culley has really, really impressed people since he got this job. But you got to sit down and do one-on-one communication, and so far, Watson hasn't agreed to do that. But as far as what's going on, I'm sure Jack Easterby's got a lot to do with it, considering what Watson said at the end of the year without naming him. People think they got a lot more power around here than they do. Andre Johnson's tweet about Jack used to be nothing good happened in the organization since he walked through the door, which is kind of unfair because the first year they did win the division and a playoff game, but they bombed out last year. And so I don't know I just don't know. If I didn't know, I would say it, but I don't know exactly what the issues are with Watson.
Listen, that Davis show here with John McClain. Always check out his articles from the Houston Chronicle. Let me ask you this, John. Best case scenario for Deshaun Watson as far as if he's traded, where do you think he should land? But also flip that. Best package for the Texans if he is moved. What's the fans craving with perhaps a rebuild coming or perhaps reloading, depending on which offer they would take if they decide to move in that direction?
First of all, they say we have zero interest in trading him, and why would they? The guy's a great player. He's a pillar of the community. Yeah, you draft. They haven't had this kind of quarterback since the Oilers traded Warren Moon to Minnesota after the '93 season because the new salary cap was kicking in and they didn't know what they were doing with it. So you wait all those years. And I'll tell people selfishly, I covered every game, every practice Warren Moon had. I've covered Dan Pastorini, Kenny Stabler, Moon, Steve McNair, Matt Schaub, and now Watson, and I've never covered a quarterback. I had more fun watching and covering than Watson. So I'm hoping they don't trade him. But if he can convince them, like in a conversation sitting down with them, that he's willing to take it to the limit, then I think they should trade him. And there's only one team you can trade him to, and that would be the Jets. That way you're guaranteed to getting the second best quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence. I'd even call Urban Meyer and I'd say, hey, Urban, would you like to have Deshaun Watson for the first pick? You have a proven product. We don't care if we play him twice a year, and we'll draft Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know what they'll do because we speculate on it all the time, but the Jets have 2 1s and 2 2s. They have the second overall pick. This is what I've been proposing. They get the Jets number 1 and number 2 this year, next year, and their 2 best defensive starters, Quinnen Williams and Marcus May, and then they let them throw in Sam Darnold, and Darnold's the starter until the rookie is ready to go. Maybe it's the first game, maybe it's the 5th or 10th game, and then they trade Sam Darnold for a pick, and that would make the most sense. But then people are going, well, it'd be a lot more than that. Whoever gets Deshaun Watson, if they trade him, it's got to be painful. And that trade made for Matthew Stafford, that's chicken feet. What the Texans ought to be able to get for Deshaun Watson, a great quarterback who's 25 years old, pillar of the community under contract through 2025.
So, John, I guess we don't have anything up here up north in the city of Chicago that, yeah, I know. I wouldn't either take anything that we have with these picks and these high salaries. I had to put it out there because, we've wanted him we wanted him in the draft, John, just to be honest with you, for the most part. Like, it was evident he was the guy just from everything he did versus Alabama and Clemson that you should have drafted him. So, we have an affinity for Deshaun Watson up here in the city of Chicago. Look, sticking with the Texans, I want to ask you about another pillar of that franchise, and that's J.J. Watt. What's the future for J.J. Watt and the Texans?
He has 1 year left on his contract at $17.5 million. I think he's gone. It's a matter of whether it's a trade or they just release him and let him go where he wants. Presumably, it'd be to Pittsburgh to play with his brothers and have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Any team that gets him in a trade is probably going to want him to redo his contract to lower that cap figure. Right now, there's projections that the cap is going to go up to 185. If it were 185, Texans would be 7.1 over the cap, and his 17.5 would wipe that out and give him a lot of money to spread around. So that's what I think. And I think if Watt were to come out publicly and say he wants to be traded or released to go to a Super Bowl contender, fans here wouldn't like it, but he's meant so much to the city, not just because of what he does on the field, but everything he's done off the field. I think people would certainly understand.
That David Show with the Houston Chronicle's John McClain. 2 more questions before I let you get out of here and get on with your weekend, and much appreciated. One, we're in Chicago now, perhaps be in the Carson Wentz scenario. Your thoughts on if the Bears acquire Carson Wentz?
Wentz has been a great quarterback at times, been a really good quarterback at times. Seems to me he needs a change of scenery. when they drafted Jalen Hurts, who I've been following him since he was in high school here in Houston. And it looked like, and I saw somebody wrote this, that he spent too much time, say, looking over his shoulder. He needs to get out of there. It needs to redo that contract to make him more tradable with a chance to make up the money he redoes in bonuses. But he's still got a chance to be great because he has been. And a lot of guys are off. Like if the Bears said, we don't want Deshaun Watson because he had a bad game up here this season when Mitchell Trubisky outplayed him. You know, that's not the case because you've seen him be great. And if you go back and if you put a highlight film of Carson Wentz, it's a pretty impressive highlight film.
No doubt, no doubt. Last one, your Super Bowl picks, and perhaps even if you got an MVP, who you got winning the Super Bowl and who would you have winning MVP?
To me, it's you can't go wrong Super Bowl. You know, who doesn't love Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Chance to defend the title, first team since the Patriots after the 03 and 04 season. But Bruce Arians never won a Super Bowl, was retiring, then had health issues. And if Brady wins, I'm fine with it. I've covered every Super Bowl he's had. I'm not covering this one. That's a great story too. But I picked the Chiefs 31-27. I have Mahomes as MVP because I never, ever pick against Patrick Mahomes. I don't care where he's going. And that first game he had against the Bucs when they won at Raymond James Stadium, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think it's 456 yards. And if Tyreek Hill hadn't dropped a bomb, he would have had almost 530. I think he could light them up again. Bucs playing at home, first time in history, but they were 5-3 at home this year, so they might be better off playing on the road.
John, listen, I really appreciate it. You have a terrific weekend, man, and stay healthy out there, man. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
No doubt.